Don't go. No, don't go. No. The people would like to see you. To see you. He wants to go out. I apologise on Rusty's behalf. He's not in much of a sociable mood today. But don't worry, you've still got me. I want to discuss a very interesting post that I saw today on Sony Alpha rumours. Because I know, I'm not really one to discuss rumours much. It is being branded as a wild rumour, but it is something that I think could be entirely possible. And also something I really hope that they do. It's being branded as the A5, and if it exists, it's stated to be an entry-level, sub-$1,000 full-frame mirrorless camera. And that's all the information that they give us. There's nothing else in the rumour at all. No potential specs or anything like that. The only thing that they show is a mock image of a full-frame sensor dropped into an A6000 series body. But honestly, I hope that's what it is. So let's discuss why I want it to be a full-frame rangefinder camera, and also discuss what potential specs might we see if such a camera was to exist. Now, firstly, why would I like to see it in a rangefinder? Very simple reason for me, video shooting. I know most people are probably going to go, don't give a shit about video. I apologise, I do. So the big problem with the A7 series is because it's got that raised central viewfinder, it can't have the screen flip up and over like you get on the newer A6000 series cameras, and they seemingly can't flip the screen out and round to the side for Canon reasons and another. But if they were to either move the viewfinder from a raised central position and out to the side, or scrap it entirely, then presumably they could have the flip up and over LCD, which would make it brilliant for these sorts of videos. Now don't get me wrong, the A6400 does a perfectly fine job in this scenario, and I'm using the Sigma 16mm f1.4, but I've stopped it down to f2. If this was full frame, I could use something like a 24mm f2.8 and get pretty much exactly the same look. But it would allow me to use a wider full frame lens like my Tokina 20mm on a full frame body. I'd get an even wider field of view, better for vlogging and stuff. Now, could you physically fit a full frame sensor into an A6000 series body? Yes, because they're both running the E-mount and they fit perfectly fine on the A7 series. The question would be more, could the circuit boards that go with the sensor all fit into an A6000 series body? I think yes, possibly the caveat needing to be that it goes with a body style like the A6600 where they don't have a pop-up flash built into it. They scrap that off, and that would allow more space inside the body to fit said circuit boards, etc. Now, I suspect the A6000 series bodies are significantly cheaper to manufacture than an A7 series body. But I don't think that's going to be a substantial enough of a difference to warrant basically taking the gubbins of an A7 III, dropping them into an A6000 series camera and having it at half the price. I think there are going to have to be some other spec differences in order to bring down the price. Now, the A6600 launched at, what, $1,400 compared to the $2,000 of the A7 III. Now, if we were to say dropping a full-frame sensor into an A6600 is going to make that more expensive, somewhere in between $1,400 and $2,000. I imagine maybe $1,600. So we're still looking at needing to save $600 off what you get with an A6600. I suspect the first saving that they would make would be to shift away from the FZ100 batteries back to the crap FW50s. And I really hope they don't do that. Because the first and second generation A7 full frames used that same battery, and it had the lifespan of a moth. It had the lifespan of an asthmatic moth trying to fly a marathon. So I really hope that they don't switch back to that battery. especially considering I can see an A5 as being very popular with people who already have a full-frame camera, like an A7 III, an A7R 4 or 3, or an A9, and they want a second backup full-frame camera body. It would just be so much easier to have the same batteries rather than having to carry around two different types of batteries. Memory card slots, it's going to be one card slot, the same as all the other A6000s. I suspect there will be no IBIS, which would be a bit of a shame because I do enjoy the IBIS, but I can realistically imagine they're going to have to make some concessions, some differences between an entry-level A5 versus an A7 III and the subsequent A7 IV when that comes out. Otherwise, people aren't going to buy the A7 cameras anymore. So probably the exact same sensor as the A7 III, just not on any IBIS mechanism, just fixed in the camera body. Now, an area where I do think they could make some savings over the A7 III would be the speed of it. Because I love the A7 III for the fact that it shoots 10 frames a second. But more often than not, I never use it. If I'm shooting fast, I'll generally shoot 8 rather than 10, but even then, I'm generally wound down to like 4 or 5 frames a second, which I think is where the A5 would sit quite nicely. If it didn't do the really high burst speed, if it only did 5 frames a second, because it wouldn't require as much processing power, which would cut down on costs. They wouldn't require the mechanical shutter to run as fast, so it would be cheaper. And hopefully it wouldn't be the same mechanical shutter unit as the A7 III, so it would be slightly more reliable as well. Would probably have a very similar AF system to the A7 III, on the assumption that an A7 IV is probably not that far away from being released, and that would likely have the newer AF tech, such as the real-time tracking that is missing off the A7 III. In terms of the video specs, again, I could see it as being very similar to the A7 III, 4K 30 frames a second, full HD up to 120 frames a second. Fingers crossed, that could then mean that the A7 IV would go up to 4K 60, although I'm not holding my breath. I think the A5 will be to the A7 what the A60-100 is to the A60-600. But hopefully they would keep in picture profiles, unlike they did with the A60-100 where they removed them. Because the stupid thing is, picture profiles are all software-based. You don't save any money by removing them. You're intentionally just spreading the field out to try and give people a reason to buy a more expensive model. So an A60-600 body using the FZ100 battery with the A7 III's 24 megapixel sensor but with no IBIS, and the A7 III's AF system but only shooting 5 frames a second, that for me would be a great entry-level sub $1,000 camera. That would be my take on it. But what do you think? Do you think it's all codswallop? Or do you think they will make a camera that's more entry-level than their entry-level A7 III? And if so, what do you think the specs will be? Leave your thoughts and comments in the box down below. While you're down there, if you like this video, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. Thank you so much for stopping by, and hopefully I will see you in the next video.